Kanbun or Kanbun. You may see or hear it romanized with an N or an M. In general, it refers to what we now call classical or literary Chinese in Japan. When the Chinese writing system was adopted in Japan is debated, with some placing it as early as the 5th century CE. Kanbun continued to be an important language into the 20th century. Official imperial court documents and records were written in Kanbun. So were many Buddhist texts, including ones written by Japanese. It was also a common language in literature, poetry, and prose, as well as what could be considered philosophical or intellectual works, such as among Neo-Confucian scholars, as just one example. By the Heian period, it had become expected that high-ranking men among the aristocracy would be able to not only read Kanbun in order to read the Chinese classics, but would be able to compose their own original writings in Kanbun in order to be considered educated and cultured. There were various forms of Kanbun, but I will be covering two very broad general categories. The first one could be thought of as actually writing Chinese, although that was not completely the case. This would include writing in only Chinese characters, using Chinese grammar, syntax, and sentence structure. And when it was read, either internally or out loud, it was meant to be done with Chinese pronunciation. As I said in my last video on Kanji, the ability to speak Chinese was not common, especially outside of the Buddhist clergy. In addition, with the massive amount of Chinese dialects there are, what the Japanese experienced as Chinese pronunciation would have been limited. So there was another option that kind of falls into this category, and that was, rather than using proper Chinese pronunciation, using the onyomi reading of the characters when reading. The onyomi reading were approximations of Chinese pronunciation using sounds found in the Japanese language. The other broad category was writing with Chinese characters using little to no kana, and writing in a way that looks like Chinese grammar, syntax, and sentence structure, but when read, internally or out loud, it was meant to be read as if it were written in Japanese, meaning using Japanese grammar, syntax, sentence structure, word order, pronunciation, and the like. This meant that things would have to be added that were not actually written, and would typically also require moving words around to make a proper Japanese sentence structure. These kinds of texts may have had annotation to help the reader. Language in pre-modern Japan is a very complicated topic, one that I'm not fully qualified to talk about, but the original script of this was far more in-depth to the point that it kind of got away from the purpose of these short vocabulary videos. Hopefully, though, this video has helped to give you some idea of what Kanbun is if you are not familiar with that term. Thank you so much for joining me and watching this video. I appreciate you giving me your time. Please check out the playlist for other videos on kanji and vocabulary words by myself and Anthony Cummings. Until next time, otsukaresama deshita.